Amid bloodshed in Syria, more extremists are penetrating the country to help bring down Assad. That's according to U.S. intelligence, which says al-Qaeda-affiliated fighters were responsible for a series of deadly suicide bombings in Damascus and Aleppo, targeted at Syrian military and intelligence facilities.
We've seen evidence of extremists, Sunni extremists. Can't label them specifically as al-Qaeda, but certainly a similar ilk who are infiltrating the oppositionist groups.
While fighting in Syria continues, the violence in neighboring Iraq has dropped, in some areas by as much as 50% in the last few months. This, as al-Qaeda leader Ayman al-Zawahiri has called on his supporters around the world to back the uprising in Syria. These men, who call themselves the Mujahideen, say they're on their way to fight a holy war against Assad. In Washington, senators asked the head of America's intelligence, James Clapper, what happens if Assad falls.
Are we prepared for the situation of a possible failed state where al-Qaeda enjoys a safe harbor and refuge from which to coordinate attacks?
His response bears no optimism.
There would be kind of a vacuum, I think, that would lend itself to extremists operating in Syria, which is particularly troublesome.
Some ask a different question. Is the U.S. on the same side as al-Qaeda in Syria, and whether its policies are indirectly aiding the terrorists?
American strategists would have to be fools not to see what al-Qaeda is doing, not to ask the question, if it's good for al-Qaeda, can it be good for us? And not to look at Assad and say, he may be a ruthless dictator in what he's doing, but what comes after him when he falls? I think al-Qaeda does its best work, or it works best, when it finds a country that is fundamentally a failed state. This is why I am against putting weapons in and aiding the anti-Assad resistance, because an all-out war there could be a disaster which leaves a failed state in Syria.
Even for many of those Syrians who are not supportive of their president, the fear of the alternative is far greater.
Why are they sitting on the fence, or why they are not in the streets with the revolutionaries supporting the protest movement? And there are often two fears. One is that post-Assad there'll be the Islamist rule, and post-Assad there will be the chaos.
The opposition in Syria is very fractured. They don't seem to be under anybody's control. Despite concerns voiced by top U.S. intelligence officials about anti-Assad extremists, Washington has failed to widen its ceasefire calls to include armed opposition, therefore basically ignoring the fears of a huge part of the Syrian population who don't want radicals gaining momentum and dragging the country into chaos. I'm Ganesh Chakyan reporting from Washington, RT.